Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce or?
Oh, sure. This is Cole Morrison. I was very lucky to work with Cole in his first senior project class, and then tomorrow I'll work with him second semester. He's a textiles major.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Cole Morrison. Like Amy said, I'm a textile artist. I essentially came to CCA to learn weaving, hence the major emphasis on that in the show. I actually used to study Spanish and translation before I came here. And while I think that words and language don't really show up in my work a lot, I think that translation is something that is conceptually comes through in my work still. So the techniques that got me into textile arts were actually just cross stitch. I was doing video game characters in pixel art. So once again, there's an element of translation, and I was thinking about squares from my young age as a teenager. So fast forward to my CCA career. The things that I noticed emerging in my work are kind of two parallel processes that led me to have a dual title for my show. I consider them two shows in one. The titles are Labor of Love of Labor and Grid Breaker. So I'm going to explain Grid Breaker first. Basically, in textiles, pattern is really the basis of the structure of what you're working with. It's impossible to not think about pattern, especially grids if you're working. So I kind of resist that idea because patterns can be very soothing, beautiful, and there's something poetic about the fact that they can spread out infinitely, but that also means that they're predictable, and that means that they can become boring. So whenever I'm working on a piece, I start with the basis of pattern, and I always find some sort of glitch to interrupt it and pull it in a new direction. So that can take many forms. Sometimes it's very literal, like in this piece in front, and sometimes it's more subtle. The other title, Labor of Love of Labor, refers to just really getting intimate with the materials and the hand processes. So the reason I love textiles so much is because it allows me to work with my hands, and that's what connects me to my body and to the world around me when I get stuck in a headspace or digital space. So really, it's all about meditation for me, and the comfort that the soft material gives me. So the title came while I was working on this piece, sort of the star of the show, and it was kind of a mantra for me, where I was deciding, is this a labor of love, or is this a love of labor? And it sort of was spinning around in my head as I was literally spinning the yarn. So backing up, all this piece comes from one fleece from one sheep that I got in the mail. It lives on a ranch in California, in Colorado. And so for part of class, we washed, carded or combed, and then spun that wool into yarn, which we then wove on floor looms. So for me, the appeal of that is all about learning these different ways of using my hands, all these different points of connection. And then I took it a step further. I continued with this project after the class was over and expanded it out into an entire quilt that I machine pieced and hand quilted. So all in all, I think this took about 9 months to create, but I wasn't really thinking about the time scale. It was more of like slowly building a relationship with the work and the processes. So I want to move on to the pieces behind me, which were made on the computerized loom that I mentioned. This one is called Manual Digital, which is something we're already thinking about, from our first test strips on the loom, because it's doing some of the work and you're doing some of the work, and you have to yourself or not. So I really wanted to run with that dichotomy in this piece. So the warp threads are all black cotton, which is standard for the loom, and the weft threads are all yarn that I dyed and spun, or wool that I dyed and spun too. And the image that you see that I uploaded into the loom was actually me spinning the yarn that's in the piece. Yeah. And this piece here is called Joyful Noise. Once again, thinking of glitches, the actual reference image for this one is a curtain that I wove with these same threads, and I distorted it as I went. So I put these two pieces together because they're woven on the same machine and with the same technique, but also because they open a new direction for me as for cloth as subject, weaving about weaving. Moving on to this piece, I call it watermelon grape based on the colors. This was just an experiment to see how many patterns would emerge when I messed with a core comes to pattern. Sort of thinking mathematically there. And while I was about to weave, I just had these green threads on the loom. I decided I can make this even wilder. So I took purple threads and just tied one to every corresponding green thread. And when I was weaving along and got to those knots, I didn't know if they would weave, but in the end they did. And it formed this sort of scar, which I think was symbolic of, pulling it in two directions that if I just woven the green cloth would emerge. So, just like in manual digital, there are these dichotomies that keep coming up in my work, where I try to find balance between opposites. And finally, this piece is called Afterward. It is hand spun and dyed wool, not by me, that I purchased on linen. And I wanted to have this piece in the front of my show because it's a very literal example of breaking the grid, and just wanted that to set the tone for anyone who is going to live.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your relationship to the idea of being slow?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I'm the only one who, appreciates something that's handmade over something that's just churned out of a factory. That's a really big conversation right now. But it's not just that. I think, when we moved away from everyone spinning wool or linen at their home, I think we lost something. I think it's a better thing overall for humanity that we don't have to constantly be creating textiles. I think it distracted us somewhat from other pursuits, but it also felt after that point like we can't go back and experience that. Some people really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm kind of trying to spread the gospel. Everyone in textiles is really, I think, showing the world that just because something is obsolete doesn't mean you can't participate in it.
Any other questions, you guys?
Have you played with growing flax at all?
I have not myself, but I actually went to a workshop in Chico Flax, now renamed Golden State Flax, I think, and got to learn how they process it from harvest.
Yeah.
And it was a really fascinating experience.
Yeah, it seems like I judge it, I can sense the direction of your movement, and it seems like you're kind of headed in that direction.
Right, like with this piece, I basically did everything but raise the sheep, so it's kind of the natural progression.
Yeah, Yeah, flax and sheep together, I can picture that, yeah. Yes.
What's the most memorable thing you listened to while making any of these pieces?
That's an interesting question. I kind of stopped listening to music while I'm working, which surprised me. There was a time where I wouldn't even leave the house without headphones. And when I started focusing on my handwork more and more, I realized that I really need this time to reconnect to my body. And the more my mind is wandering, the less I'm accomplishing that goal. So for the 20, 30, 45 minutes a day that I'm spinning or carding or weaving or whatever, I'm trying to be as present as I can.
So what is your plan after graduation then?
So my goal is to open my own studio. As for what I'm making, I have lots of ideas, but I'm thinking of trying to balance production for gallery space and production for direct consumer sale. I think that the art world, I've learned so much about the art world since coming to CCA, and I realized that something I'm not going to be fully immersed in at any point. I think there's a huge potential for just making an heirloom that someone can pass on, as opposed to something that's on the wall. I would like to make both.
It's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah.